Did he ever talk about UAPs? Did you
Yeah,
ever have a
little.
sense
Mhm.
of unidentified
Yeah,
craft and his
yeah,
involvement?
yeah, a little bit. And many times I actually ask the question, like, all the kids at school are talk about this, unidentified, whatever was flying over. Do I need to be concerned about aliens?
Hi there, I'm Natasha Zouves. Jennifer Callahan Page had three close family members working at Area 51 and serving on the Nevada Test and Training Range. And now she is opening up about UAPs, the conversations they had around the dinner table, and what work she believes they were engaged in at Area 51. She's also speaking about a particularly troubling issue.
I sat at her bedside every day, just holding her hand. Why she apologized, crying, I'm sorry I ever worked there. I know that that's what's killing me.
Area 51 veterans and their families getting sick, in some cases dying, while the DoD still refuses to acknowledge they ever served out there in the desert.
But I assumed it was safe. They still send people there.
In fact, in her mother's dying days, she says she told Jennifer, "I knew I was exposed." And she worked to declassify documents and images because she knew she would need proof one day. We're going to show you those images today. Here's our conversation. Jennifer Callahan Page, it's a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be with you again.
And so tell me, what was it like growing up in your house? Because you actually had four family members, three of whom were very close to you, who either served at the Nevada Test and Training Range in Area 51 or worked there. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, my mother followed the contracts for Department of Energy and ultimately ended up at Wackenhut for security. And my father did a lot of the top secret cleanups for accidents, and he had expertise in the field of the airplanes and everything that they needed to work on there and investigate what had happened. So he had a lot of work in the early 70s. And my grandfather was started in 56 at Area 51 and top of security there. So he was there for almost 20 years. And then my uncle-in-law was a pilot and flew the members that worked out there back and forth.
And a lot of these missions, very top secret, a
Yeah.
lot of this very classified. As a child, did you ever ask them if they saw aliens at Area 51?
Yes, often actually. And, I would go to school and kids were talking about, oh, there was a UFO. And then around that time, my dad would be gone cleaning up something and come back. And then it's all, hush, hush around my house. And everybody's kind of, just like I would walk in the room and everybody would stop talking. It was kind of that
Mm.
thing. And because, my whole family had that top clearance and they were all, working together and knew what was happening, there was a lot of discussions where when I would walk in the door, it would be, and then I would ask the question and I always knew because my grandfather's famous words were, "We don't talk about that." So I just knew that that was something that they dealt with, and that meant that it wasn't for everybody else's ears.
Well, what kind of cleanup was your father involved in? Do you know?
I have done some investigations since then on dates because I have some journaling and some things from my mother when he needed to go and what he was called up on. So I did search some of those. And there was some unidentified objects that had crashed into the mountains and some planes, I believe that in getting to know, and kind of Dave took me under his wing. I'm like a little sister to him. I love the camaraderie with the entire group that worked out at the test site, and how much we've been able to become our own family and support each other. And he, in talking with him a little bit, I'm pretty sure it was some of those MiGs that were out there that they were talking about. There was a lot of, when he said he flew in and saw that flight line of Russian MiGs, you just go, what? But there was a lot with those, and our men were learning those, and then when they would crash and different things, and why, what is it about that plane that needed to be figured out in order to be able to fight against it. So that was the kind of work he did.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Russian technology for sure. Did he ever talk about UAPs? Did you
Yeah,
ever have a
little.
sense of
Mhm.
of unidentified
Yeah,
craft and his
yeah,
involvement?
yeah, a little bit. And many times I actually asked the question, like, all the kids at school are talk about this, unidentified, whatever was flying over. Do I need to be concerned about aliens? And it's interesting because we talk about that now. There's been so much talk recently with some unredacted material and everything, and it's interesting because I had already formed an opinion as a kid just based on the way they talked about it, and I always believed that there was definitely a possibility, and they were maybe already had gotten close enough that some people had seen them. Yes. So
Wow.
yeah.
What did he ever actually say about it?
So I specifically remember one time when I walked into the room and my grandfather and father, because my grandfather went on several of those missions as well. And they were sitting in the living room when I walked in, and I'm pretty sure the conversation was about the unidentified object. And there's a little bit of journaling from my mother about where he needed to be and when he needed to be there. So I had those dates and kind of look back on that to see if my perspective on what they were talking about was right. Um, and yeah, I'm pretty sure that was one of the crashes that they were concerned about and brought pieces back and were inspecting the metals and some. That's kind of what I gleaned from just the little bit that I did hear as I walked in the door. So yeah, but that was my
Yeah.
my perspective on what I understood.
What
So
what did you hear them talking about when you walked into the door?
just the metals, and yeah, it was unique, and it was unexpected what they had seen, and like the element of surprise was
Mm.
definitely and intrigue was definitely the conversation between them. I don't In my brain, I don't know that I remember specifically the words, but I do remember that they were intrigued by what they had found, and it was unusual to what we know as people.
It
So yeah.
didn't seem like they were talking about technology from an adversary.
No, no, not at all. And I had heard that kind of talk before. Like now I know, looking back, my mother, had been on the stealth 10, 12 years, I don't know, something like that, before it was, released to what it was. And I knew that there was, because there would be like, it's a special day, I need to go here for something. And because my mother mainly worked in town, but she went out to the test site quite often. So when it was something special, I always knew, there was something going on, that kind of thing. So just the talk was different a little bit. It was more intense, more
Yeah.
serious. Yeah.
And in all of the times that you ever pressed your dad and asked him
Mhm.
explicitly, did he ever say any words of actual confirmation to
Mm-mm.
you?
Nope, never, never
Yeah.
did. No, that my family was very, very, they took their oath seriously. They were very, um, adamant about what we should know. And there was times, I mean, imagine as a child, right? At 10, 12 years old, like, gosh, am I supposed to be worried about this? Everybody else is talking about this.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me it's not something we talk about. Well, all the other
Yeah.
families are talking about it. Why aren't we talking about it? Right. So those kind of conversations. And then that became a deeper conversation of there's some things about our country that we do and that we have to keep secret so that other people can't steal that information. And so I understood that very young. And my grandfather was he was very high up in military and for the police department before he started working, at Area 51. But he was very, like, that was just the word. When my grandfather gave the word, that was it. He didn't ask another question. So when he
Yeah.
would say, we don't talk about those things. A couple times I pushed and I'm like, well, why not? Everybody else is. What can't we talk about? What can you tell me? Because I'm pretty sure I should be scared there's aliens. And he would go,
Yeah.
yeah, we just don't. We're just not talking about that. So, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. I appreciate all of
Yeah.
that information. And I know you say separately that their work out there on the range and at Area 51 and the DoD's decision to send them there to keep their employment there, that their physical presence out on that range for so long really destroyed your family.
Yeah.
T
Yeah.
tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, the hard part for me is the knowing that the government knew on some level, right? That there was, there was risk, right? And so everybody went to work with that understanding. When they're wearing decameters and they have to go through scanners and all of that tells you that you are maybe exposed, maybe that there's, harmful things, but to know that the government knew how harmful and that they didn't even know all of that. And then, my mother would come home and she's wearing civilian clothes because she's not military. And where did her clothes go? She walked in the door with their shoes on and she put her clothes in the laundry basket, which was on the floor in her bedroom. And then I would pick that up and take that to the laundry room, sort through all the clothes, do the laundry, press and clean their clothes for the next day. And so all of that was brought back into the households.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that it wasn't normal for dogs to have lipomas, huge grapefruit size all over their body. Like every dog I've ever had has had them. I didn't know that those kind of things aren't normal until I learned about what happened at the test site, till I went through everything with my mother and, and her passing, and then started to investigate. And oh my gosh, are you kidding? And this is on the particles that just fly around in your house and it's everywhere. Wait, what?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I lived
And
in that house my whole life.
let's be really clear about what we're talking about here. As there's a 1975 environmental report that shows the government knew there was plutonium, beryllium, several other substances, radiation present on the Nevada Test and Training Range and around Area 51, and they still made the decision to send men and women there because it was in the national interest. And now, decades later, many of these men and women are getting sick. They're developing tumors, they're developing deadly cancers and other illnesses. And the DoD is still refusing to acknowledge their service on the range, which is, they say, preventing them, these vets say, is preventing them from getting the critical benefits and care that they need. That is the situation.
Yes.
Your grandfather, your father, and your mother, are any of them with us today?
No, they're all deceased. My uncle as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what happened there. I understand your grandfather and your father, their lungs were just shot through with what appeared white on the imaging. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yeah. My father was 90% infiltrated in his lungs. I've always had it's very interesting. So let me give you a little bit of background. So I'm adopted, so I'm not genetically the same as my parents. Thank goodness for, parents that loved me and wanted me, even though
Yeah.
I wasn't, I'm their chosen family. So,
Yeah.
we, for my mother and I to have similar female issues, like serious female issues, thyroid issues, skin issues, hair issues, digestion issues, lung issues. We did not know, and when I was a kid, why my lungs are the way they are. And,
Mm.
over and over, doctors would go, "Oh, she has TB." And then they would test me again. "No, it's not TB." And then they would do the x-ray. "Oh, it's not, I don't know what it is." So, we finally
Mhm.
figured out part of it with when my father was diagnosed with interstitial lung disease. And it was about 90%. That was literally months before he passed.
Wow.
So,
And you say
yeah.
that diagnosis caught him completely off
Oh, yeah.
guard. He was young. How
He
old was
was.
he when?
Yeah, my father passed at 56.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I had stopped by a half an hour before he passed to I was driving through the neighborhood and saw his car was home early, and I stopped and brought in the baby. I'd had his first grandchild, was 3 months old, and he was
Yeah.
so proud and, so excited to be a grandpa finally. And I brought him in and we sat and talked for a minute, and he was leaving for another job and said, "Love ya," and called my mom and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Jen brought my baby. He's so cute." And I showed him the pictures that we had just taken over the weekend. And yeah, 20 minutes later, he was gone. So,
20 minutes
yeah,
later.
yeah,
It
meant
happened so
something.
fast.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know he was your best friend.
He
I
was.
remember you
Hmm.
describing that. Tell me more
Yeah.
about your relationship with him and what it was like
Yeah.
to lose him at
Oh my
56.
gosh. Oh my gosh. When I got married to my husband in 1990, I told him, "I hope someday, and I don't take this personal, but I hope someday you can be the best friend that my father has been to me my whole life."
Mm.
We were just, to not be his genetic child, we were so alike to, just, our personalities were the same. My dad loved to laugh and tell jokes and tell you about, what happened. And we talked on a daily basis. I can't even imagine where we would be today with cell phones and being able to, talk like that, and text and, because he would always be sending funny memes if we had a phone today to be
Yeah,
able to do
I mean,
that.
you told
Yeah.
me that he would call you
Uh-huh.
and literally just tell you a joke
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
be like, "I love you," and like hang up the
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah. I
He just
got a
wanted to
great
bring that
joke.
smile to your
Yes.
face.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it
All the
must have been
time.
so hard to lose him. It
Yeah.
must have been
It was.
such a shock.
It was. And it was interesting because we have to trust our gut, right? I've learned that in life. About 2 weeks before my father passed, I looked at my husband. I remember right where I was at on Charleston and Ourville, which is a really common area here. And I looked at my husband and I said, "Oh my gosh, if something happens to my father, I give you permission. Just check me into a hospital. I'm probably gonna lose it." And two
Mm,
weeks later, he passed. So
yeah.
I was somewhere mentally preparing, even though we didn't know because he was so
Wow.
healthy. He had just had, my father was also a race car driver. He had just had a physical, his annual physical checkup. The doctor ironically told him, "Your heart's like a baby's. You are," because that's what they're looking for at that age, right? Make
Yeah.
sure you don't have an incident on the racetrack, and you're healthy and good. So he was he was in really good shape. So yeah,
Wow.
a blood clot broke free, and we're pretty sure from the lung area where all of the scarring was in his
The
lungs.
damage
So
was.
yeah,
And then tell me about your mom because
right,
this was supposed to be you bringing her home to
yeah,
Vegas for her to spend time with her grandkids, for her to get to travel.
mhm,
And it happened so
yeah,
fast.
yeah.
Tell me more about that.
So we got her home, back to Vegas, um, just before Christmas Eve, in that crazy snowstorm that everybody was stranded for we were in the airport for 17 hours getting her
Oh
home.
my gosh.
So we got her home Christmas Eve and got her checked in and her own place. And she was very excited to be able to spend the time with us and travel. And the kids were grown and able to travel and enjoy time out together as well. And we got her here. We celebrated Christmas, and just a couple weeks later, I got a call and she's confused and she doesn't know that it's midnight and not 12 in the afternoon. And can you talk to her? I think we're going to check her into the hospital and just have her checked over. And she didn't want to go. And I told her, "Mom, you don't sound like you understand what's happening. Let's just check it out." I got a call from the doctor at 4 a.m. that said, "Come in. It's serious." And I got there. They called him up. He said, "I'll come right up." And he said, "Look, it's serious. She probably has less than 3 months. There's nothing we can do." We had a full body scan September 4th of the year prior, trying to figure out why she was having some back pain. Thought it was the osteoporosis that she was just
Sure.
horrible. Also another sign. And she had lost like 8 inches in height. So, we
Mm.
thought maybe that's what was going on. And there was no cancer, nothing highlighted in her body. When we checked her into the hospital the end of January, they said her entire body cavity was filled. So
Oh
in
my
just
gosh.
those few months, yeah. And then we got her stable and put her into hospice, in living hospice, to help, manage the pain. And she had a little nodule right here on her throat, and it was about the size of her thumbprint, my thumb. And I asked them to do a scan. They did the scan the next day. The doctor had already gone home. On the fifth day, it came in, and the sixth day we were going to read the scan. The doctor was going to go over it with me. And they were pretty sure at this point it had gone to her brain. She was starting to have some confusion. Um, and on the sixth day, when I came in to get it read, she passed. So
Mm.
I didn't ever get to see the full scan. Not that I can't get it, but Her
Yeah.
that nodule that was the size of her thumb, of my thumbprint, was the size of my fist the day she
Oh
died.
my gosh.
Yeah.
And what kind of cancer was this?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Oh
So
my
it just
gosh.
shows you that's on the outside, what I can see. Imagine what was going on the inside. Yeah.
And, her body just being shot through like that. And I know that she said some things to
Yeah.
you as
Yeah.
she was laying there, as she
Yeah.
was in hospice.
Yeah.
What did she tell you? And
Yeah.
what did she work to reveal
Mhm.
to leave you with
Yeah.
so that you would have proof of what was
Yeah.
out there?
So I had already, done a rough shot cleanup on pulling her files and moving her here, and grabbed everything that I thought was important. Um, so hopefully, we got all of that. Who knows? But
Yeah.
she when she really started to get sick, I started asking questions. Non-Hodgkin's, like, what is this? Where did it come from? Like, why is it so aggressive? How are we here when we didn't have anything just a few months ago? And the doctor said, it's unique, and it's usually, you know, representative of a few things going on. And so I asked her, Mom, you know, what's going on? I remember you saying something to me about keeping some records. What was all that about? Why did you say that to me? Where are those? What do I need to know? By this time I'm starting to, what do we need to figure out for you
Hmm.
in your last days and get, settled for you? And she said, I always thought that I was exposed. She wore a decameter and they changed it out on a regular basis. And so she was feeling like maybe she was exposed and it wasn't recorded enough. And so I said, what do you mean by that? You said that you kept something. And she had told me that, I don't know, 20 something years ago, that she had some documentation in case I ever needed it. And I asked her, what was that? And what did I need to know? And she said, I always expected that we were exposed. And so there's some documents unclassified for you to be able to know. So, yeah.
Wow, she worked to declassify a whole cache of photos and documents.
Yeah.
What do some of those photos show?
Hmm. So one of them's actually in the control room, which was fascinating to me. All of the chemists and nuclear doctors are sitting in that room with their name badges, and you can see who those key people are. The Sudan's crater, 140 million tons of dirt moved, the largest crater. The vent pipes that were vented to the top, even when they started to bury them. So some of that shows all the cabling running across the desert, right? Miles and miles of just huge cables. And then the vent pipes with where they drop it down. And it shows all of that. So even though it was at that point they were doing it underground, some of that first work was above ground. And even the ones that were below ground vented upward. And Dave can share some crazy stories about, the metal piping that came flying off that weighed how many tons, went
Yeah.
flying and never was found again. So it shows all of that, where now as the government's starting to document and say, we have moved, they're moving where the cleanup was on their documents. Cleanup was really over here. It wasn't really over here. Well, we have records, we have maps. Now we have the documents to show they were really, here's all the holes, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think your mom wanted people to know about what was going on out there?
Gosh, on one level, just how my family was so proud of that work. They knew how important it was and talked about it quite often. My mother worked with Harry Reid. Our family and Harry Reid's family were very close. She worked with him quite a bit for, what was important, what can we do, how exposed is Yucca Mountain, all of that info. So they were so proud, and on the other side, like how important that work was. And it was true important work that was dangerous. They knew it was dangerous. They were told that it was dangerous, but they knew that it was so key to our protection for the US, for our going forward and being able to have a, a, a card hand that we knew we could win if we ever came up against, the battle again. And they were just very serious about the work and how important it was.
Yeah.
It was I'm trying to find the words to say, it was the conversation around our household, around the dinner table, around how key pieces of the government are in, supporting us as people. And we may not always know what's going on, but that it's important to know that they have our best interest. And that was a big conversation around our house on a regular
Yeah.
basis.
I know that you are friends with Dave Crete as
Yes.
well, who is a veteran from the Nevada Test and Training Range and Area 51, and similarly engaged in that super top secret work. Couldn't even tell his wife the weather, let alone what they were doing every day, and still can't talk about 99% of what he did every single day. But tells me that the late Senator John McCain actually told him, because he was privy to all of that information, told him, your unit ended the Cold War. That is how serious that work was, that happened out there in the desert. And I'm so sorry for what you and your family have been through. I know so much of this is coming to light now. I'm so proud that at NewsNation we've been able to give more of a platform to this story, because it's such an important one. More than 400 veterans have been added to that memorial list so far. They are dying without the benefits and the care that they're due, and they're not able to leave their widows and their families with what they deserve as well. There is a bill that has been introduced. What are your hopes around that, and what do you want every American to know about all of these families who have been affected by this?
Yes, my hopes for this bill is that they know that this is the right thing to do, and let's take care of our veterans. Our
Yeah.
veterans took an oath and went out and did the work without asking the questions. They knew it was dangerous. They knew that it was top secret, and they didn't ask questions. They just
Yeah.
did the work because it was the important work to be done. Now, knowing what they were exposed to and how detrimental this is to their health and to their future and to what their families have been able to do, and what it has done for the families, that is the heartbreaking part, because they didn't ask any questions. Yes, sir, I will do it. This is what I signed up for. But now, knowing what we did to their bodies and ravished their bodies in the way that we did, and their health and their family's health, because it was passed down in their genetic genes, we have to take care of them. How can we not? We have to. It's so important.
Can I ask,
Yeah.
what is behind you right now?
So this is mom. So this is mom and some cards. And then this is her lighted butterfly with some of her ashes as well. She told me
And what is the significance? Yeah, what's the significance of
yeah.
the butterfly?
So before my mother passed, I asked her, what was I going to see? What would remind me of her? Was she going to send me anything? And she said, yes, butterflies, lots of butterflies. So, yeah,
And has she kept her promise?
she has. She has. Doesn't matter where I'm at, there's a butterfly, whether it's on somebody's, a little charm on their Crocs, a sticker on their car, or a monarch in the middle of the winter. So I've seen some crazy, like, oh gosh, I wouldn't have expected to see that here. So yeah.
That's a wonderful thing. And what a gift she gave all of us as well in working to declassify those
For sure.
documents and that information.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned the families, and I want to talk about those ripple effects, because what I did not understand when I was first investigating this story is that it's not just the veterans. It very much does not just stop there. Almost every single one of the men that I spoke with mentioned their wives having miscarriages while they were serving out there. The repeated miscarriages, and then also issues for their children. Several of them born with tumors, born with birth defects, born with issues. And they described the situation where they simply did not know, that they believed they were covered in radioactive dust, covered in toxins, and they would come into their home and they would hand that uniform to their wives, who so lovingly would launder that material for them, and that they were bringing this contamination on their boots and on their clothing into their homes, that it was not just affecting their genetic material and then affecting their children, but literally was poisoning their families in their homes from the inside. Tell me a little bit more about that and your experience with that, because you mentioned your mother would come home and she would put her clothing in that laundry basket on the floor, and you would do that laundry.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that is, I think, the piece that nobody really understood, that it can be carried that way. The weird colored stains, the purple on the shirt, I remember that, the yellowing of the whites, that was just very, unusual because it wasn't like a tan. It was like a yellow film, like a
Mm.
creamish yellow film. And it was very strange, right? Like, to me, it was just what happened. I didn't know that that was unique. My mother, I'm sure, had no clue. I have
Hmm.
actually talked to people that said they wore hazmat suits out there for their work. And I asked them, so did you throw away the suit? What did you do on a daily basis? And they said, no, we went through the clean area and then we took it off and then we put it in our bag and brought it, threw it in our car and brought it home. And I said, well, where were your shoes? So same thing, right? They're bringing it
Yeah.
in on everything that they have. And so, as I was talking about, me not being the same as my mother, yet having some of the similar issues and the skin issues and the female issues and the thyroid issues that are not genetically related.
Right.
How does everybody have those same things going on? So yeah, we are seeing it. We're seeing it not just in the family members that were born to this, but my husband, I've been married for 35 years. He's had grapefruit sized melanomas removed. So, and his family doesn't have any issues like that. So, it is being passed down. We're seeing it in the next generation. And so it's,
And do you believe he developed that just from living in your house?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, my mother
Yeah.
still worked at the test site when my husband and I first got together. So she worked for another 5 more years, 4.5 years after my husband and I got married. And when we first got married, we moved in with my parents to save money for our first home. And so we lived here together while my mother was still bringing it home. And then later, when my father died, a few years later, 4 years after we got married, we came to live at my mother's house to help her. And
Mm.
so he was exposed to it over and over. So I do believe that it was still in the house until we pulled the original carpet and all of that from my mother, her days working there. So yeah.
Yeah. What did you have to do to try to rid the house of what was in it?
Ironically, we didn't know at the time that we gutted the house and did a remodel. We had no clue. Now looking back, we go, oh gosh, we would have done a different kind of clean out had we known what was in the house. Again, this is the frustration. The government knew how much time and exposure could they have limited us to by saying, in the beginning, oh gosh, this was way worse than we expected. This has a longer, half
Yeah.
life. We need to get this out of your homes and do the right thing. We could have abated it in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really struck me during
Hmm.
the interviews with these male veterans, some of whom have experienced multiple cancers now at this point, um, who are physically changed forever from the radiation and the treatments from these cancers. Not one of them shed a tear for themselves or grew emotional when talking about their own health struggles or their own journey. Every single one of them became emotional when talking about the effects on their families, specifically talking about carrying this on their bodies, on their uniforms, on their boots, back to their wives and their children, about their children's issues. That is the moment that every single one of these very proud, very strong men truly broke down. And that really struck my heart.
So I found that fascinating as well. The amount of the weight of that, right, for them,
Yeah.
that they're not concerned with the crazy amount of health issues that they have had. They're like, I signed up for that, but they didn't sign up for that. right? They knew they
Yeah.
were signing up for, but really, they didn't know that they were going to expose to this level and then expose their families. And so the burden of that, my mother on her last night, literally sobbing, looking at my husband going, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to spend time with you all. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that this is what's going to take me. I'm so sorry. I love you all. You know, how sad for my mother's last moments to feel that same weight, to
Mm.
feel the hurt and the pain of having to leave and leaving behind, oh no, what else is there? You know, understanding now that that sickness was being passed on. That's the hard part. And how do we make that better for them? I don't know. What I can tell you is that when we can take the burden of them figuring out what to do with their health and how to best address it, and we can get them better and get their quality of life, you know, what can they do if they're healthy, right? They have something to give still in this life, and so do their
Mm.
families. So the quality of health for their families, for their wives that were washing those clothes and taking care of them and feeding them as they're sitting breathing the same stuff that we didn't sign up to go breathe and to go, you know, be exposed to take care of that and to take that burden away, so that as they know that their inevitable is coming, that the burden is not still left behind for them to worry about their families being taken care of and their health, and finding out if it goes on to the next generation and the next generation. We don't know, but that burden is heavy for them. And it's hard
Jennifer,
conversations.
can I ask, are you worried for your own future?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was told at 21, 2 months before I was getting married, that I was not ever going to have kids. I didn't believe in that. I went and got a whole lot of extra support, unconventional support at that time, even. Um, and I had 2 kids. I was very blessed. We had a whole lot of challenges to get to that place and be blessed with our 2 boys. Um, I don't know what that still brings, because I know, you know, for my mother, it had a lot of repercussions later as well. The female issues, and you know, where does that go? The skin issues, and then oh, they're lipomas. Okay, we can take them off, we can test them, but down the road, you know, yeah, it's a huge concern for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must have been so hard to watch the amount of, suffering that your mom went through in the end, and to know that with all of these veterans that we've been speaking with, it does take decades, and that's the trajectory of it for things to develop, for things to unveil themselves over time. How do you grapple with that knowledge that the future is uncertain, and that, you believe that you did have a certain amount of exposure on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's daunting. It's one thing that both of my parents were very good at teaching me was to look forward with um, a positive thought process. You know, that knowing that whatever is my best good will work out. I'm sure my mother had no clue that her path would take me here. Um, and I'm sure she's smiling down, you know, proud that I
Yeah.
can carry on the work and speak for my family and be here. It's not a place I ever expected to be.
Mm.
Not, you know, I love people. I love talking to people. I love getting to know people. Being the spotlight is not necessarily, you know, I love to be at the party in the front of the room and laughing and, you know, making everybody else
Yeah.
laugh. But to be in the spotlight is not always where I want to be. Um, but I feel like this is important. I feel like I've been given a blessing that I didn't know. So, you know, when you say, what does that look like, right? Looking back, all of those steps were preparing me for today. And I just had no clue, the being adopted and being able to be special and say, hey, this is not genetic. I'm proof this is not genetic. All of those
Yeah.
separate pieces. And then what do we do? I don't even know. I mean, it's such a big, such a broad answer as to how do I prepare myself for tomorrow. The only thing I can do is to speak up and say, do the right thing. Who are those people that know those connections and can support us? How can you support the invisible enemy and the work that we're trying to do to get the word out there?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what tomorrow brings, but I'll pull up my big girl pants and get ready. Let's do it.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective
Yeah.
so much, and you for speaking out the way that you have. I know, um, the story on NewsNation has been seen by more than 1 million people at this point. We had the ranking House member of the VA committee come on our show and promise that he will try his best to see this through, and we'll be following up. Um, Can I ask, what do you think your dad thinks of this story finally being out there in a really big way and of the way that you have shown up in particular as such a key part of telling this story and getting it out there?
Yeah. I'm sure my father's so proud. And I'm so grateful to him for him fostering my personality and allowing me to be that unique child with a whole different perspective. I always felt like that. I was kind of the black sheep. I was adopted. I looked different than the rest of my family. I wasn't part, like all of that, right? Allowed them to, both of my parents, to teach me to be unique, and that's okay. And I think that most prepared me for today. And I'm sure that he would be very proud of that, and the fact that I grew my wings and could stand up and speak out for all of us. So yeah.
Jennifer Callahan Page, I appreciate you
Um,
so much. Thank you
Thank
again.
you. Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for all the work that you've done. Thank you so much. News Nation has made this amazing for us. So thank you for your work, your commitment for us to stick it out with us. Oh my gosh, it has been amazing, the platform. We just were talking about it on our board meeting. Like, we're so grateful to you. Thank you. I just cannot thank you enough.
It is one of the honors of my life, truly.
Yay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.